Hello, welcome back to another episode of Maritimes and Beyond for ACORN Canada Radio, where justice meets radio. I have something very important to talk about today, and that is the proposed natural gas plant in Tantramar, New Brunswick. To discuss this with me, I am very pleased to welcome back the MLA for Tantramar and Deputy Leader for the Green Party here in New Brunswick, Megan Mitton. Thank you for coming on today, Megan.
Thank you for inviting me.
So over the summer, it was announced that the proposed natural gas plant, we're jumping right in, right? Okay, I'm not building up to anything here, but so over the summer, it was announced that the proposed natural gas plant will be built in your riding, Tantramar. It was suggested it was going to be in Skaduk. I know it doesn't matter where it will be built because you're going to oppose it anyway, but when you heard it was going to be in your riding, what was your reaction?
I was pretty shocked, honestly. I found out because NB Power sent me a press release the morning that it was being announced. And at first, when I started reading it, they've named it, renewable integration. And I started reading renewables, and I thought there's going to be a renewable energy project in my riding. And I got excited briefly, and then I kept reading and realized, no, they want to burn fracked gas and diesel in my riding. And so I became obviously very opposed to what they're proposing. And people in my area, we just started organizing right away.
And we saw that there was an open day, I believe, wasn't there? And I think some of our members attended that. And I mean, obviously, this has been on the cards for a while that they were going to put this natural gas plant in New Brunswick. And NB Power are claiming they need this to meet growing demand caused by population growth. However, it's not a good thing to have a natural gas plant, but some people don't understand why that a natural gas plant is not a good idea. Can you explain what's so bad about it to those who perhaps don't really understand or just don't get it, or,
Sure. Yeah, and as you mentioned, I was opposed to it when I thought it was going to be in Skaduk as well. It's been clear for a very long time from, the International Energy Agency, from many UN bodies, climate scientists, we have to stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure. So stop building things that will burn, gas and diesel. And in this case, it'll be fracked gas because we can't increase our emissions. We can't keep contributing emissions that are warming our planet. And I think, people in New Brunswick, we still have wildfires burning even today. We're feeling these effects of the, heat waves and wildfires. And then on the other end, we also sometimes have floods. And so we're seeing a lot of these impacts already. And so that's why. And what they're talking about burning here is methane. It is, fracked gas. And all along the life cycle of like when, from it coming from the ground to it getting burned, it also like escapes along the way and can really contribute a lot to our emissions. And methane is way worse than carbon dioxide in the short term in terms of climate change. And so this is just like, scratching the surface on why we shouldn't do that. There's also local implications in terms of health, in terms of impact to the environment. This is in the Chignecto Isthmus. This is an environmentally significant area in terms of wildlife conservation, migrating birds coming through here. And then there are people who live here, and there's worries about what will happen to water, air pollution, noise pollution, light pollution. And so the list is long as to why we don't want this to happen.
And I understand that because, I mean, there's a lot of things that this is going to impact on many people. And, we have to look closely at that as well as just, and I think another thing that shocked many people is that the plant will be built by Missouri-based ProEnergy and operated by its subsidiary rigs Energy Atlantic. ProEnergy are owned by Energy Capital Partners, or ECP, investment group, whose executives are major Trump Republican donors. Now, after the whole elbows up thing and, you know, fighting against Trump and his tariffs, I find that hypocritical. But what's more concerning is this will lock New Brunswickers into decades of dirty energy. Like you mentioned, it will raise health risks and push costs onto low to moderate income families, where the American oil and gas corporations pocket the profits. What do you think about that whole thing, that it's coming from an American pro-Trump company as well? Like, it's, I mean, for everything that you've said, obviously, is a reason not to have it, but that is like the cherry on top of not to have it as well.
Absolutely. It's unconscionable. We should not be doing business with those people. We should not be further enriching the rich who back Trump. It's just really clear that we shouldn't. And I think I need to quote Elizabeth May in Parliament. She stood to speak about a major contract that the Canadian government is going to sign with around nuclear with American companies, and she said, "I guess it's not elbows up anymore; it's checkbooks out." Yeah. And I think that's the case here too. Okay, I guess the elbows are down, and we're just going to sign a contract that's going to cost us a lot of money. We don't know exactly how much. They won't say, but it's going to be enriching those American companies and having the fracked gas flowing up here from the US as well.
Yeah, I think it's very concerning. And I just want to remind everyone, you are listening to another episode of Maritimes and Beyond for ACORN Canada Radio, where Justice Meets Radio. Today, we're talking about the proposed gas plant that's going to be built in Tantramar. And I'm talking with the MLA in Tantramar, which is Megan Mitton. And we're talking about how this is going to affect people in many ways, environmentally, the climate change, health, the fact that it's a pro-Trump American company, which is really, you know, I have no words for that. And I want to ask you as well, do you see that NB Power is trying to sidestep regulation to get this deal through? Because I've seen a lot of articles recently about how they are having these sort of like not public hearings and things like this. And, you know, we've had people from the Energy Conservation Council quote, and they believe this is happening as well. Is that what you think as well? Are they trying to do a secret push through here without people really having the chance to stand up and oppose it?
Yeah, so the EUB, the Energy and Utilities Board, would normally have oversight over the projects that NB Power is doing. And part of their mandate, and really a big part of their mandate, is to look at the cost to ratepayers. What does this mean in terms of, you know, NB Power's assets and the cost of power for us, and to do their due diligence. But there's essentially this loophole where NB Power has a contract for ProEnergy to build the plant and to build some of the infrastructure, and then they'll just sort of buy it from them at a very reduced cost, and not have that same level of oversight that I think should happen for our energy system. And so the EUB decision on whether they're going to look at this or not is expected very soon. And I really sincerely hope that they take a look at this and scrutinize it, and that we find out what kind of costs we're talking about. Because I also think this could set a very bad precedent for future things, that this loophole could get used, and we would have less oversight, less accountability, less transparency than we should for our utility. This is the people's utility, and so they should be answering to us.
And that is very concerning, because they should be transparent with everything they're doing. And the fact that this can get sidestepped and pushed through without, you know, any accountability or transparency, that should make us all feel afraid, because
Absolutely.
you know, it's just how everything in the world seems to be going right now, like secret deals under the table to benefit the rich and all this, that, and the other, and it's treading on those people who it's affecting. Now, they say that this new facility is with Mi'kmaq partners and will allow for more renewable energy. Now, I don't see how a gas plant can allow for more renewable energy, but are the Mi'kmaq really going to be partners, do you think? And how will this allow for more renewable energy? Because I think I also saw something that said this can't be passed unless it's agreed with the Mi'kmaq community. Is that correct? Or
So as part of the provincial environmental impact assessment, ProEnergy held open houses. And I just want to remind folks that it was like July 14th, I believe the press release came out. It was like August 12th and 13th that these open house meetings happened. They were trying to push this through in the middle of summer. They can't get it by us here in Tantramar, though. We've been showing up and organizing. But they, in their press releases and their documentation, said that the North Shore Mi'kmaq Tribal Council was a minor equity partner. I was very proud that my community has shown up, has done their research, we went to those meetings, and I pushed along with the mayor, Mayor Black, and citizens to get a Q&A instead of just an open house where people would just like mill around and not necessarily hear all the answers. So we got a Q&A on the second night. It was not recorded. Media were not allowed to take pictures or record it. It was ridiculous. But we did get to ask questions for a couple of hours. And during that time, it became clear that the North Shore Mi'kmaq Tribal Council is not an equity partner. They have the option to be one. And so this idea that the Mi'kmaq are behind this and are partners is not true. And MTI, which represents, many Mi'kmaq chiefs in New Brunswick, has come out and said they have many concerns, that no, they have not made a decision about this, and that they want to have a Mi'kmaq essentially, impact assessment done as well. And so I think they've absolutely misrepresented what's happened. I think that should, we're trying to figure out, like, does that disqualify them in some way? Because they've put forward information in their EIA assessments saying something that wasn't true.
That's completely concerning that they can, again, that goes back to Trump on this misinformation. He loves that, and they're doing the same thing more or less, and then trying to implicate people when they've not even been asked. Or
so that was extremely concerning. And so there's that piece. And then, like I said, the fact that they were having these public meetings, they're a part of a public process like that the government requires, and they wouldn't let the media cover it. They wouldn't let people take pictures or record it or anything. I think is really wild. I couldn't believe it. And I tried to challenge them, and they didn't say we're going to throw you out, but they said, if you take a picture, we're going to throw you out. And they did throw a journalist out for taking a picture. So that happened right here in New Brunswick. Speaking of media crackdown that we're seeing in the United States, that happened here. And then I'm happy to also speak about the renewables piece in terms of what they're talking about. Okay. So they are talking about, we'll get into some sort of like the energy grid, the energy system. They often have big, turbines, for example, that are spinning, and that can help them basically to regulate the energy in the system. That's like a really simplified way of saying it. And they're saying that for this plant that they would, you know, be burning gas part of the time, but that they want to use it to sort of regulate, almost buffer the energy in the system, in the grid. There are other ways to do that. So this is not the only option. We are also not at a level where we have so many renewables. I wish we were at the level where we had so many renewables that we were terrified about intermittent power being a huge problem, but we're not there. But there are power electronics to achieve that system stability. Like there are other ways, basically modern ways of dealing with our electricity grid. But NB Power and New Brunswick are very much set in their old ways of thinking about baseload power, of thinking about needing Point Lepreau, which I argue is intermittent power. It's offline a lot. But and so I'm saying intermittent power, like it is offline, but there's they want to have these really huge things to maintain this baseload power. But the way we're going, we need to have solar and wind and battery storage so that we can be more flexible and not relying on baseload power in the way that we have in the past, and having it decentralized. I would also like to see it be more community-based, and I would love to see more like owned by our utility or owned by our communities. And I don't want all the energy to still be owned by major corporations. I don't think that will be the type of just transition that we need in energy if, like, you know, major corporations are the ones still owning all the power. Yeah.
And I mean, it always baffles me. Like we're maritime, right? So we're living right by, I know it's not quite on the Atlantic, but you're living right, not far. And so you have a great source of wind. And I know people are saying, it's not windy often. It is from there. Like I'm from the UK, and we have big turbines. We're big wind turbines up in the North Sea, and many farmers are now turning to using wind power in the UK. I know we're a smaller country, but it can be done if each province is responsible. And of course, the solar idea as well. Like Europe now having the solar panels on their balconies, and you know, so these ideas can be implemented. It's just that the governments don't want to implement them, I think, for some reason. But before I go on to the next question, I also want to make a comment on the fact that you said the media wasn't allowed to record or take photos. That in itself tells you something is wrong or off if you don't allow the media to have full transparency to record what's going on. So that should ring alarm bells for so many people. And I find that quite disturbing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was horrified. It's shocking. It shouldn't happen.
I agree, completely agree. Now, people obviously are hearing about it. NBA ACORN oppose it, but we are also hearing a lot of opposition against this gas plant. I know you mentioned earlier, and I've read as well, that the residents of Tantramar are opposing this as well. And you also mentioned this at the beginning, but I'll reiterate it. We saw a summer of horrendous wildfires showing just how vulnerable New Brunswick is to the climate crisis. What are you hearing from the people of New Brunswick and Tantramar? What are their concerns?
So I immediately started hearing from people, individuals who live near the proposed fracked gas plant, people who work in, you know, conservation or like wildlife, you know, biologists, for example, and just people who care about the climate crisis and can't believe the path that NB Power and the whole government is backing it, that they're choosing to follow. And so, like I had mentioned earlier, there's so many issues, but there are people who are worried about the health impacts of breathing in the fumes in this area, how much water is going to be used, how much diesel, for example, is going to be stored on site. We're talking about, we've had an extreme drought, wildfires. It's essentially setting up like explosive in the middle of a forest. And then the fact that it's, and it's in a very important place. The Shignecto Isthmus, we often talk about it in terms of, well, I talk about it a lot because we're protected by the dikes here. And I'm very concerned that there's going to be sort of the perfect storm that's going to come up the Bay of Fundy and flood my community, overtop the dikes. And the Shignecto Isthmus is that stretch of land that connects New Brunswick to Nova Scotia. And so we are at risk of having a flood here. So that's often what I'm talking about. But this land bridge also is important for wildlife. It's the only way for animals like moose, for example, to be able to travel between these different habitats. And it's really it's a flyway, so migratory birds travel through and stop here. There's a lot of wildlife biologists and experts who live in this area because it's a special place they're studying and trying to conserve. And so I think that is actually extremely important, that this is just a terrible site. And I also don't think it should be built anywhere.
I get that. No, it shouldn't. I mean, no matter where it's going to be built, it shouldn't be built, because there are other ways that they can think of and try and implement. I know when we went to the review with the three people who were reviewing MB Power, they were talking a lot about that the power here is, I forgot the word they use, tripping, I can't remember, but it's on and off, I guess, is what they mean. But surely there's a better way than using natural gas to stop that from happening. Surely if they do proper research, they can find a way to stop that. And again, whether it's in the north, in the south, in the centre, it should not be there. But in such an area where it's richly with wildlife and people living there, and even the environment there, it seems like it's going to be a disaster movie almost if anything goes wrong. That's for sure.
Yeah, and there have been questions from the community also about well, what's the emergency plan for if there's like a fire or an explosion or something? And essentially the answer was well, we don't have one. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. I guess we'll talk to the local fire department, but they hadn't at that point. But the local fire department wouldn't be prepared for that level of industrial, explosion or fire or whatever. And so in terms of the mitigation, I'm extremely concerned about that aspect as well.
And you would think if they're planning on doing that, they would have a safety backup plan in place before that. I mean, that's just ridiculous that they don't even know what to do if such a thing happens.
Yeah, and so hopefully that doesn't need to be drawn up. We're planning to keep going and convince the whole government that they need to direct NB Power to pursue renewable energies and to stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure, stop burning new fracked gas.
Yes. So I want to remind everyone, you are listening to another episode of Maritimes and Beyond for ACORN Canada Radio, where Justice Meets Radio, and I'm talking today to the MLA for Tantramar, Megan Mitton, and we're talking about this proposed gas plant that's going to or may take place in Tantramar, which will have devastating effects on people's lives and also the wildlife there and the environment. And we've just talked about all this, and I think I know the answer to my next question, but has the government read the room wrong over this? And should they be looking at other ways to lower costs rather than rush into something that seems like it's not beneficial for anyone, really?
Yeah, I think they need to read the room again. I mean, the folks in Tantramar are not accepting this. And I have heard from people all around the province who are standing with us, who are organizing and, across sort of like climate and nature-based organizations. But then, as you mentioned, like ACORN showed up at the Q&A and has been involved. And I think having this cross-movement solidarity is really important. I think that Premier Holt needs to really think about this and reconsider. They, I think, are on the wrong path. I think that it's very misguided and to pursue this, given what we know about the climate crisis. There's no justifiable way to do this. Given that this is an environmentally significant area, there's no justifiable way to do this. Given that they don't have a social license, there's so many reasons not to. And so I really do hope that they will change course. I think that's really the only path forward that's going to work for the people in my area.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, yes, we are, NBA ACORN are opposing it, and we are actually holding a rally on Saturday, the 27th of September at noon in Fredericton, outside the NB Power office downtown. Because we do oppose this. We want cleaner energy. We don't want dirty energy. This is not the way to reduce costs. Of course, we're against all the raising costs, like everyone, is that we keep seeing. But this is not the way to do it. Do you have any message that you want to add to, to what, any message, like whether we can share it on Saturday or just here? Like what do you encourage people to do now?
Yeah, so I would echo what you just said. We do need affordable energy, but this is not the way to get it. We need clean energy that is not harming our climate and our health, while making sure that it's affordable. It shouldn't be on us that NB Power has been run poorly for so long. It is our utility, and but we need to have a say in it, really, and we need to make sure that, like, so we talked about the EUB looking at the cost. The EUB needs to be considering climate and social factors. So we should actually be changing the considerations to look at poverty, but also to look at the environment, and having these different tests, not just sort of the rates, not just looking at that piece. So I think that's one of the changes that could be made. I encourage people to keep speaking up and working together. And I am so proud of how people have stood up in my area and across the province. And like I said, across different movements. I think that's how we move forward and how we win things. I would encourage people to keep working together and, go ahead and write to the Premier and let her know that you're not happy about this. You can write to the Minister of Energy as well, Renee Legacy, and say you're not okay with it. And I'd say copy your local MLA so that they know that you're not happy about this as well. Feel free to copy me if you want, but I'm already on board. I'm convinced. But I think that continuing to speak up and show that there's not a social license, and pushing back against this is really what we've got to do. And now is the time, before they get shovels in the ground. Doesn't mean we're going to stop if they get their shovels out, but we need to try to cut this off, at the beginning.
I agree. And it's about time we put people before profit, because at the end of the day, this is all what this is about. This is going to make these American oil gas companies so rich, while we in New Brunswick are going to suffer and be left with the devastation of what could happen and what will happen, whether it's to the wildlife, the environment, and to ourselves.
That's the thing. This isn't a charity project that they're coming to do out of the goodness of their heart. They're going to make a profit on this, and it's going to be significant. The cost to build this, the estimates I'm hearing based on looking other places, because we don't have the facts in front of us, it's looking like it would cost at least $1 billion probably to build. And so they're going to want to make back more than that. So that's a whole lot of money coming out of New Brunswickers' pockets. When we know solar and wind is cheaper and faster to get online. My goodness, we need to do that and have batteries. And I can't even believe it's 2025 and we're having to talk about fracked gas still.
Right. I think that's a whole different conversation that we need to have another time. But I am definitely with you 100% on everything that you've just said, because it's just insane. And sadly, the people of this province, the people in Tantramar and the wildlife, they're going to pay a heavy price if this goes ahead. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to say thank you for joining me today, Megan. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as always, and we'll keep following what you guys are doing in Tantramar, and if there is anything that we can attend, for sure we will be there in solidarity and support, because as I said, we are opposing this 100%. And I would like to also thank everybody else for listening to another episode of Maritimes and Beyond for ACORN Canada Radio, where justice meets radio, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.